was an incredible one. This guy as far as I can go. Wow, look at that. Look at that thing. Oh, double. There it goes. It's doubling. It's split into two. It's split into two. Now it has another one. Whoa. It's doubled. No, now it's going back. It's morphing back into. Oh no, it's three. It's three. No, it's two now. It's totally doing this. Whoa. Check it out, man. Now it's a double again. It's doubling. It's moving. Whoa, look at that thing. It's two now again. It's two. Play that for me. Give me a real nice today. Whoa. Thank you. Thank you. Both of them powered up. Got him. Two ships, a double powered up. I got him. Check him out, man. He's going. You should see the field around this guy.
All right, everybody getting situated here? So how many people were here yesterday? Right, how many people are new? Wow. Welcome. We're going to bring Andrea up here to sing a song, and she asked me to put a slide up for this song because it's a song about the sun and connecting to the energies in the sun. And I love this photo. This is actually a NASA photo. They call it the Great Chicken God because they were focused on this big coronal hole in the sun. And I thought it was interesting. They never talked about this over here. I don't have my laser with me, but this. See this guy here?
Yeah.
He's got two eyes, nose, mouth, a body. Yeah. So, there's all these songs about Helios and things like that, and ancient legends and everything about the sun, the god sons, the sons and the god beings and things like that. But the sun is actually conscious, and there's actually beings that exist in the sun.
And is enlightened. Lord Surya.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Sanskrit.
Yeah, and so there are beings, the light that's coming to us from the sun is consciousness. It's filled with consciousness and energy.
Yeah.
And I'll go more into that later, but
it's enlightened.
This is a really good photograph. It's a NASA photograph showing some of these beings, but they didn't even cover this. And when they were talking about this coronal mass hole, they never even addressed the fact that there's a being in the photograph. They missed that completely. So Andrew told me to put this up about the sun and connecting to the sun, and her next song is about that. So, are we ready?
Ready.
This is Andrew with the Outback Gypsy.
Gypsy.
But Gypsy because she's a woman.
This is a really short chord on the guitar. Okay. So I wrote this song actually when I was meditating one morning, really early, and the sun started to rise, and I could feel the light coming through, and I felt this really strong impulse to write this song. It started to come through me, and I went, okay, I've got to just ditch what I'm doing and get the pen. So it's called Breathe Again, and as James said, it's about connecting to the solar energy so that we can breathe again, like fully breathe again.
right. We forgot the introduction, but that's no big deal. No, everybody knows, why we're here and what this is about. I really don't like talking about myself. It's something that, it's like pulling teeth for me, but sometimes I have to give a little bit of the story on how I got to where I am. But I had a lot of encounters as a child. Lived in the high desert.
Just a mic.
All right, how's that? Yeah. Okay. So I had a lot of encounters as a child in the high desert, and we used to live in where this big granite mountain was right behind us. And as a kid, I used to go up and sit on the boulder and talk to these beings. I didn't know who they were, and trying to figure out humanity and why people acted the way they did and everything. And they'd always explain things to me. And even with my mom, we were processing some things, and it didn't make sense, the behavior that's going on, and I couldn't figure out why, she was acting this way. And then I found out we had a past life in Greece where it's customary that in our tradition to turn the business or the holdings over to the son, and then the daughter gets a dowry, and so we worked really hard on building up this combination restaurant store. And it was turned over to me, and then she was given a dowry. So there was some real, unhealed stuff that happened from that lifetime. And I didn't agree with it. I said, as soon as my father passes over, I'll bring you back in as a full partner. That's what I wanted to do. But there's just some really issues going there. And so all these things were going on where she was making sure I wouldn't get things. All the other kids would get things, or she'd give me something that I really enjoyed and then take it away. It would disappear. And I go, this makes no sense, what's going on here? And then so the Pleiadians would come to me and tell me what happened in the past life, and that's how she behaved that way. And so I'd go to my mom and I'd say, I know why you're doing this, and that never worked, that didn't work at all. So, because she had some control issues and she couldn't stand, this little kid coming up to her and explaining to her, what her issues were, so. But I always had guidance so I could depersonalize things all throughout life. I had this incredible guidance. And then I got, indoctrinated into school, and I couldn't talk about those experiences anymore, and it got pressed down and pretty much forgot about it. At 5, I talked a little earlier about that. At 5 years old, I had bronchial pneumonia, and I was in the hospital, and I was actually in the hospital dying, and they kept telling my parents I wasn't going to live. I'm not going to make it through the night. And I had a woman in blue that kept appearing to me and stroking my head and talking to me. And she kept pulling me through every night. And then the last night, she gave me this substance like ice cream. And I ate it. It wasn't cold, and I ate it. And I wasn't sick a day after that. I never missed a day of school or anything. And so later on, I found that was Mary. It was like Mother Mary. And I wanted to do a disclaimer. I'm not Catholic. Mary's a universal being. And she's been watching over me ever since. I've had a very strong connection with her. So I really don't believe in religions. I think, religiere means to bind you into something, and I think we have to transcend all religious and cultural beliefs and get into unity consciousness. And it doesn't mean get rid of cultures and things like that. Just they're all part of the Creator. We're all part of the one, the whole, and we need to look at that. And diversity is honored, throughout all creation. Without diversity, this would be a very boring planet. So the wind agrees on that one. So it's really funny when you start talking truth, the wind comes in every time. But I had a drowning at the age of 25 where I crossed over the tunnel, went through the tunnel, and I ended up in this just pure golden light. It was the most loving, blissful energy you can experience. And after that experience, when I was in the light, the only way I can explain it is that you're a light being, but you're part of a greater light, or you're part of a greater consciousness and energy. And I had a conversation with this consciousness and energy, and I asked, how can I stay? And it came back to me and said, I never told one of my children when to come or go. That's free will. And I said, well, how can I earn the right to stay? Because I'm still running some old programs. And it came back to me and said, you cannot earn what is given freely and unconditionally. And then the next thing, I asked, how can I serve? And I didn't hear anything for a long time. And then it came back to me and said, what do you want to do? What brings you joy? And A lot of people saw the picture I put up here, the alien, you know, with the beer bottle and the cigarette and everything. And I put that up there to talk about humor. Humor is very important. What I found out from that experience, the source is just pure bliss. It's pure joy. It's you know, beyond anything. And I think humor is one of the fastest tracks to get there. I really do. So, you know, when we are laughing and uncontrollably laughing, some of these beings come in, like Ezekiel comes in, they call him the God of eternal bliss, or some of these seventh dimensional line beings come in, and they're just pure, they're coming from that golden realm. And people just start laughing, and they can't control it and everything, and that laughter actually brings them up into that frequency so they can have their connection. So it's really important to get laughter back and joy back into our lives and do what brings us joy. Because that's what the Source told me. After that it says, what do you want to do, what brings you joy? So the more we're aligned with what brings us joy, and usually that's in service somehow to humanity, it's not about overpowering or abusing humanity, or the more you get in touch with that, the more, the closer you are to the Source. It's really that simple. And so you don't need a very elaborate teaching. It doesn't take rocket science or anything else to figure this out. You know, it's just, one of the lamas I studied with, he said there's so few enlightened beings on this planet because it's so damn simple. And I said, well, what's the answer? And he said, you focus on love and joy and bliss until you become it. You know, make that your single focus. You know, that's what's going to take you there. But he also said, get out in nature. You know, get away from social consciousness, get out of nature, focus on the heart, focus on the love and joy and bliss, and that through the heart, you're going to connect into the higher dimensional realms, because your soul actually sits right here. It sits right next to the heart, and that's your connector to the Source. And when you operate from the heart, you're really in alignment with Source. If you're operating out of the mind, you're in monkey mind. It's a different program. So your real power comes from the heart, from connecting to the heart. But after that near-death experience, after that, you know, I told him, I said, what brings me joy would be to come back and talk about the true nature of God, what it really is, and diminish these old images and things. And so I heard As You Wish, and next thing I know, I was back in my body and pulled out of the water, out of the ocean. And it began like 6 to 8 foot waves, and then there are 25 to 27 foot waves. They were sneaker waves. It just slammed us. You know, that's how I had the drowning experience. But that was the big wake-up call, and that's what really started this journey. And I started studying with every lama, yogi, every master. I took every process-oriented therapy you can imagine. And because I realized that basically we have these layers of stuff around us, and it's all like fear, guilt, unworthiness. It's wounds and traumas and wrong conclusions from past experiences. And that's diminishing our light. That's holding us down. And if we can start cleaning those layers off, the more we're going to expand. And the more we expand, the more we become one with the Source. So the one consciousness that encompasses all consciousness on all planes and dimensions throughout the multiverse is right here. And that's why Buddha said, you know, the whole universe is within you. Jesus said the temple of God is within, you know, ye are gods, children of the Most High, you know, that's what they're all saying. Be still and know ye are God. You know, I wanted to be a Bible thumper here, but they're all saying the same thing, like go within, like the Source is within. So when you go within, you expand, and you start experiencing that you're a multidimensional being. You're not a body and a personality, you're a spirit that has a body and a personality, and that spirit has many dimensions to it all the way back to the Source. And this is the real key if you want to have contact. If you really want to experience what's happening in the multiverse, it's all about expanding in consciousness. And then you're going to know what's going on. You can run around and chase these little metal craft, you know, with the little grays in them and the back engineered government stuff and things like that, and that does exist. But why? You know, it's like, it's a very low frequency. And if that's what brings you joy, great. You know, if that's really what makes you happy, you know, that's great. You know, but it has a frequency to it, and I try to stay away. You know, people go, hey, we're going to go out to Dulce. You know, we're going to go out to Area 51, and I go, why? You know, why do you want to connect with those guys? You know, there's, you know, you might as well just go to the White House. You know, and say, hey, there's no intelligent life there. You know, why go there? That's why they don't land on the White House lawn. Everybody asks about that. Why don't they land on the White House lawn? And I said, well, how many people there are really operating out of integrity? You know, how many people have pure intent, you know, a loving heart and open mind, you know, in the White House? I said, what's the point? You know, what's the point? So that's what it's all about. Contact is going to happen when we rise to the occasion. So when we rise to the occasion, we're going to have contact. You're going to set a frequency out, an energy out. They're going to see that and they go, okay, this person's ready. You know, and so it's very important to understand that. I wanted to put this up. This is a picture of Inha, and she was the one that inspired the Anunnaki Return, the beautiful song that Dale and Andrea played. It's on her album back there. But they're talking about these times. And I think I need to lay a foundation around, because there's many creation stories. Some creation stories go back to the very beginning. But I'll share a little story that they talked to me. They said basically the Earth is over 7.5 billion years old. It's much older than we say it is. It started out as a hot gaseous ball that was thrown off from the sun, and it found its cradle orbit and started to cool. And you can see pictures of planets forming out in the universe, and the crust isn't quite solid, and they've got light shooting out of the crust. So as the Earth cools, the center cools, and the heavier elements are spun to the exterior as it's spinning, you know. So your crust is formed over, you know, millions of years, billions of years, and then it goes through a process, you know. And you have the mineral kingdom, and then you have the plant kingdom, and the animal kingdom, and then the human kingdom, which screwed everything up. But I saw a cartoon the other day. It was really funny. These aliens were flying by and they dropped this jar and it broke, and these humans took off running in every direction. And they go, oh my God. So it was kind of funny. But I mean, it's all about, I think we're beautiful beings. I think we're divine beings. We just forgot. And that's what this is about. That's what I'm going to tell you a story about that so you can remember. So the reason why we forgot is because, one thing, we haven't been told, you know, the real story, and there's many different stories. And so the story I'm going to tell you, it's part of the puzzle. It's not all the puzzle. There's other pieces in this, but I want to give you a bigger story. And I haven't done, this is the first time I've done this, where, because it's going to probably piss off a lot of people when they hear the real story. And it's a lot of religions are going to be upset and things like that. But I just want to get into it because I figure if they get upset, they need to be upset. You know, and that's part of the process. And I've never been one to need acceptance and approval outside of myself, so I just let it rip and let everything fall where it needs to go. And then apologize later. It's kind of funny. There's a couple things I learned from some powerful masters. They said, the most powerful thing you can do right now is to be authentic and to be true to yourself. And we all have our own unique purpose for being here. And so getting in touch with that and being authentic is where your power comes from. It's not about all of us wearing sandals and putting on a white robe and having long hair and talking about love and peace, you know. It's like if everybody were carpenters, there'd be no buildings, you know. You'd have no electricians, no plumbers, no, you know, you'd have a shell there and that's about it. So it's really important to realize that we're all unique, we have our own unique purpose. The other thing too is that, as a disclaimer, I would tell people I'm not your guru, you are, you know, the guru's within. And if you follow me, you're lost. So if you follow me, you're not doing your own unique purpose. You're not going within and connecting to your own unique purpose. There are shared things. We have shared things we want to bring out and work together on. That's true. But never give away your own unique purpose. And it's so important to make your own personal connection with Source and get your guidance from there, get your information from there. Because as Pete was saying, everything's external right now. We're totally manipulated through the first three chakras, which are survival, sex, and power. And it's coming through the media and everything else, and we're locked into those chakras. When you get into the heart, you're free. You know, your heart, you start making your connection to Source, and you're free from all this other nonsense. And so if you knew how much suppression is happening on this planet, most people would be shocked if they knew how many billions of dollars and how much time and energy is put into holding humanity down. and stopping evolution, they'd be shocked, and it goes into, the fluoride in the water, the aspartame, the chlorine, the food additives, the GMOs, the chemtrails, the inoculations, all of that's what it's all geared for, is to shorten your lifespan and dumb you down. And unfortunately, I don't want to go to details on this. If I did, I could be here forever. But we have to really stand up and say, no, none of it, we're done. No more of this. Don't support it anymore. But that being said, I wanted to get into this. This information is coming through many sources. I have a lot of Palladian contacts that I talk to, the Orion Council of Light. I speak to them quite often. This Inha showed up to me. She's a 9th dimensional Anunnaki being, and she showed up in my hotel room once, and I was sitting there, and she appeared to me, and I went, oh my God, I looked up, and here's this 8-foot tall being standing there, and emanating just pure love, just the height of the divine feminine energy. And when she appeared to me, I kind of said, yes ma'am, how can I help you? That's all you can say when something like that happens. And she started telling me a story, and started filling in stories and helped me to understand the real history of Earth. So, and that's what I want to talk about is this story. And I've had these golden beings like Ezekiel, which is an ascended form of Ezekiel. And Ezekiel and Cassia came together and soul merged and became a God being known as the God of eternal bliss, and that's my main teacher and guide. I can probably, let me see, I want to bring that up. I think it's way down here. I'll show you a photograph. This was taken by a Taoist monk of Ezekiel. But I'll kind of keep talking as we go. I think, where are we? Oh, here we go. There, that was taken at the ranch in a field, of echinacea field. There's nothing in this field. You can see this whole crystal city starts to form, and here's this golden being. And when Ezekiel showed up to me, it was after my near-death experience. I had several other experiences, like white light experiences, and going up to the other dimensions, having conversation. And the first time Ezekiel appeared to me, this is one form he takes, is just pure energy. And you can see it's kind of like a winged golden light energy. And when the first time I saw him, he was sitting on the throne, and Peter was talking, we were talking about the throne, the God,
throne beings.
The throne beings, they call them, And he was up, there was these white stairs, and there was these 2 small pillars in front, and one had a bow and arrow, and the other had a book on it. The pages were empty, and so that's where the books came from that I wrote, with Reunion with Source and Becoming Gods. That Ezekiel, that's his information, that is very simple to understand, and it totally resets your brain to understand. So I had to kind of tone that down so it'd be good for everybody, but now I'm going to do more detail and bring in more information. So I'm going to jump around a little bit because I don't do things on a linear level, and so I might kind of tweak your head a little bit when I do this. And if you want to fill in some times and dates, I'm terrible at times. I don't do numbers at all. It's all about experiences and memories. And so when I had my initiation with the Orion Council of Light, they reminded me of all my other lifetimes. And some of those lifetimes were as Anunnaki. I had a lifetime as one of the Anunnaki. And I know from that experience what happened back in the day. And I've had lifetimes, on the planet as the old prophet days, and I've had all these different lifetimes in different planes and dimensions as well, like Palladians and Orion Council of Light and Andromeda lifetimes. And so they brought those back to me. A lot of people don't want to tell you about their lifetimes. Everybody's going, I was Cleopatra, I was Napoleon, They have these big events where they have, if you were Cleopatra, come to this, they fill a whole stadium with people who say they were Cleopatra in a past life, or married. It's kind of funny. But, I can tell you all these lifetimes where I was lamas and yogis and captains on ships and all that other stuff. But, I was also cripples, beggars, and I was a Viking warrior. I hacked off heads, and I was a road bandit in Mexico, So I had lifetimes here that I haven't figured out yet. I had to get more into that. But whenever I go places, memories pop in. But I'm aware of a lot of my lifetimes. And if you really think about, the average age is about 40 to 50 or so. And you take in the amount of time we've been civilized here on the earth, and you figure it out, how many lifetimes you could have, it's like astronomical. And some of your lifetimes weren't even here. They were in other civilizations that are billions of years older than us. So we don't remember, because all we remember when we go through the veil, we forget. And all we remember is this lifetime. We get attached to the body, the personality. We forget, other than our dreams. And our dreams start reminding us of these other lifetimes. So I'm going to go into those a little bit. And I want to go back to the Anunnaki. Let me see here. Go back up here. And I want to share some things. And this is, where did she go? Oh, I just saw it here. So anyway, so this is like something I've never talked about. And I've always said this is like an Anunnaki hybrid. It's a demigod. It's part human and part Anunnaki. And it's Kyle. And I haven't really revealed this. I didn't want to say anything about this because I don't want people to go into worship, but we've all done this thing, and this was a past life of mine as Kyle, and that's where I got this story from. And so what happened in the ancient times when the Anunnaki were here, like over 500,000 years ago, they came down and they brought the group, and everybody knows the story, usually about Enki and Enlil. They had Enki was kind of the creator god. He was a scientist that was experimenting with a knuckle dragger that was here, that was, Neanderthal man, and added their genes, and then kept working on perfecting that. Adam was more the perfected copy of that. And actually Adam was about 16 feet tall. So the first Anunnaki were coming here were about 24 feet tall. They were very big. And when you see the statues and the temples, the doors are immense, and their beds are like huge, and the chairs are like incredible. And then why would they build these giant chairs? Because they were giants. They were very big. They were very large beings in the very beginning. But over time and over millions of years, most of them are around 8 feet tall now. They're not quite as large. And so basically what happened was there was two rebellions. One was on the earth, the Eceti, who were supposed to help with the gold, mining the gold, which they needed to preserve their planet. And they were putting it in the atmosphere, and they're also eating it as well to preserve their life. They had a falling out. They had and a lot of their mines are actually here in Australia, and they're in Africa both. So they're here in both places. So this is over 500,000 years ago when they came here, and so they were hanging out for a while, and then they had a rebellion, and then they had a rebellion within their ranks with Enlil, who was the warring god. He was the god of the general. He was in charge of that end of things. And then they had Enki, who was the creator god that wanted everything to be preserved and continued. So it sounds familiar because we have this image of this all-loving, all-forgiving God, and then we have this image of this jealous, wrathful God. Does that sound familiar? That we've been running this program. So it's going to go further on. So they had a rebellion, kind of, and then they asked me if I wanted to be, they said, which side are you going to choose? Are you going to choose Earth, or are you going to choose the council, to stay aligned with the council? And I said, I'll give you my decision later, and I went back and I chose the council and to work with them because they were still operating under universal law, and they had rules and regulations. And what happened that there was rebellion, and the ones that stayed on earth fell. They fell, and that's the fallen gods, the fallen angels. Everybody has these stories about that. They fell, and they started getting into wars, turf wars. They fought amongst each other. They even used nuclear weapons on each other. And then one of them, Marduk, was the one that actually invited the Greys and the reptilians to join he wanted full dominance over the earth, and he even went against his own people. And so the original, the council and the other people kind of moved on. They went on and they left them here. Now over time, the more time they spent on Earth, they couldn't go back. They couldn't go back to ancient Lyra, which is where they're from. So Nibiru is just a settlement. Nibiru is done. I mean, there's nothing on Nibiru right now. Nibiru has been, it's not even, it can't sustain life anymore. It's overheated. The big wings coming out, that's the whole planet that's overheated. It's not sustainable for life. And so everybody says that when Nibiru comes around, the Anunnaki are going to return and things like that. That's not the case. They're actually from ancient Lyra. And Lyra is the root, the cosmic root race, you know, for a lot of humanity here. And so I'm going to go further than that. So we're a mix between ancient Lyra and we're a mix between the original people, and there's been a lot of genetic tinkering in between. So that's kind of the story that went on. Now, they went on after their turf wars. They had to leave, and they had all these huge wars in Iraq and Africa and all these different places. And in the Gobi Desert, there's a huge area where there's a sheet of glass. It's all green glass underneath the sand. And they're trying to figure out what happened back there. And that was some of the great wars that went on, you know, between them. So that's part of history, you know. And then we know the flood. Like Noah was a demigod. Noah was half Anunnaki, half human. And so he, you know, the Enki said, hey, Noah, you know, there's a pole ship coming. Things are going to get really ugly. You need to grab whatever you can, you know, build your ark and go, you know, and things like that. And I think there's more to the ark story. I don't think it was animals. There's more DNA that they kept, that they grabbed. Because they were very advanced back there. They were cloning. You know, they were creating hybrids. They were doing all kinds of things back in the day. So then you have the next story I want to go into. So that went on. They had the Great Flood. A lot of them got wiped out. The ones that were left over were what? You know, they had the genes of the gods and human genes as well. There were mixtures at different levels of that. So the ones that were left over. Then the Pleiadians came, and the Pleiadians, and that was about over 18,000 years ago. Pleiadians came, they set up Atlantis and Lemuria, and those are the first Pleiadian colonies. And the same thing happened. Over time, they started fighting against each other. The Atlanteans fell from unity consciousness. They went into technology and power over others, which is what we're doing right now, the same thing. And they lost it. And then they started using their weapons in a very negative way, and then they were taken out. So there's a lot of things that happened. There's earth changes that happened. Some of the earth changes were started by great wars. The Atlanteans came over to the Lemurians or Mu, and they used their beam weapons and just melted down the whole towns and whole cities. Because the Lemurians, or the people of Mu, said, look, they were warning them, look, stop, you need to stop, you're taking the wrong direction. And the Atlanteans said, you know, nobody tells us what to do, and they did the first strike thing, you know, so it was a mess. Some of the Lemurian scientists were in space. They still had space technology. And when that happened, they weren't too happy about it, so they brought in a nice big fat meteor and slammed it into Atlantis. So now you have the Atlantic Ocean, you know. So that's what happened there. So that made a real mess of things. You know, everybody had to start over again. You know, you're back to spears and bows and whatever else you can get food with. You know, you're back to survival, base survival. So we've gone through this several times because of meteor impacts, natural events, natural cataclysms, things that we've had to start over and over again several times. And some of the events I want to talk about too is that when they left after the Great Wars, they went to Greece and that area, and Enki became Poseidon, and Enlil became Zeus. And so that's where you get the Greek gods from, the same thing. And the demigods came from the Greek gods, which were half human, half Anunnaki. So this is tying this all together, the ancient history. We have never been told this story about what really happened in ancient history. So now you have these guys playing it out, you know, and then later on in life you've got Yahweh and you got Jehovah, you know, and you have the Old Testament Jehovah, who's the jealous, wrathful God, like no mercy. You know, he was a genocidal maniac. And if you read the Bible about Jehovah, he'd send his ships in. People don't know about it. He'd send his ships in and just waste the place, and then he'd send Joshua and his army in to clean up. You know, and it was people with, you know, shields and spears against ships with lasers. It was this unbelievable. And he just like mercilessly wiped out whole towns and cities and things like that. There was one island people that were very advanced, very artistic, very advanced people. When he came to them and demanded that they worship him, they said, you know, you're not God. You know, God's everywhere. The Creator's omnipresent. And they worship the unseen God. He laid this whole island to waste, which is now the Dead Sea. That's where the Dead Sea came from. And there's other experiences. There's an experience in the Bible that's talked about where this disc comes out of the firmament, and it has bronze feet like calves. It has fire and brimstone coming out from underneath it, and when it landed, it sounded like 1,000 rushing rivers. So what's that? I mean, what do you think? Today, with our knowledge, if you saw a disc come out of the firmament with bronze feet, with fire and brimstone coming down, it's a ship. You know, what else can it be? But they didn't have any reference points. They had to use fire and brimstone, calves' feet, you know, to explain what this is. Okay, out of the ship come the cherubims, wheels within wheels with flashing lights all around. Those are the small little shuttles. They come out. And then, supposedly, you know, God steps out and orders 6 of his men with their shattering weapons to destroy all the men and women and children of Israel. So how can 6 men destroy a whole city? You know, these people, they have weapons, you know, they have spears and arrows and shields and swords and everything else. You know, how could 6 men do that? I mean, they had to have some pretty nasty weapons to pull that off. And they said with their shattering weapons, you know, they had either sonic weapons or some kind of weapon that just leveled everything, you know, when they came in there. And then he tells a man dressed in all white linen, who's in a white suit, to reach in the boughs of the cherubim and spread hot coals around the city. And he goes, henceforth everybody's going to die a hideous death. Nobody will return to this place. Your hair and fingernails will fall out, and you'll be food for the raven and the beast. So, what's that?
Just doing some theory.
Yeah. So what is that? What is that? You know, what makes your hair and fingernails fall out, and what makes the place uninhabitable for like the next 100 years or so?
Radiation.
Exactly, radiation. So one of the cherubim, he pulled hot coals, radiation out, spread them around the city. And so this, and I'm telling you, this is kind of a heavy story, and I'm telling you this for a reason, because this is where we get the image of the wrathful God. And it's not God. It's not God at all. It's something else entirely different. It's an ET that was here. And so we have these interactions over and over. The bearded God comes from the Anunnaki. The image of the bearded God actually comes from the Anunnaki. And that's where we have that image. And some of the bearded gods were like Enki, were really loving and compassionate, loved his creations, and wanted to see them flourish and continue. And then you had Enda, you know, and then you had Yahweh, you know, the God of love and peace. They talk about Yahweh as the God of love and peace. And then they talk about, you know, the all-forgiving God. And then they talk about Jehovah, the wrathful, you know, the jealous, wrathful God. You know, that, you know, you'll have no gods before me, you know. So how can you have, and everybody's saying, oh, that's just one God, you know, and I'm just going, how can you have, I said, if this is true, and this is one of the problems of Christianity, if this is true, your God is totally schizophrenic and needs some counseling, you know, because how can you be jealous, wrathful, and a genocidal, but at the same time be all forgiving and all loving? You know, what's up with that? How does that work? And so I'm going to tie Jesus into this. And some people go, oh, Jesus never existed. It's been proven he did exist. And he's an archetype of many beings that have come before. And so what happened is there was a prophecy that shall come a great one that'll bruise the head of the one who bruised the head of man. And it was an ancient prophecy, and that was him. That was Yeshua ben Joseph. That was his real name. It was Yeshua born of Joseph. Was his real name. And the Greeks gave him, here come the Greeks again, they gave him the name Jesus, which means son of Zeus. Jesus means son of Zeus, right? Son of God. So he goes, okay, I'll be Jesus if you want me to be, whatever you want to do. He didn't really care about names and things. So anyway, so this guy comes in, and so I could go into more detail, but what happened was Mary had the genes from ancient Lyra. She had the genetics, very high genetics. Joseph was not the father. There was another being that came in that was, and this is where it gets fuzzy. I'm not sure if he was a very high Palladian or an Andromedan, but it was his genetics. It was Gabriel's genetics that came in that actually created, combined with Mary's genes, that created the vehicle for him to come from. Because when Jesus came in, he came from the golden plane of bliss. He was done. He was done with all this stuff. He was beyond all that. And so he incarnated, and he had to create a vehicle that could hold his energy, because it would have burned the synapses out of any other vehicle. So they had to create a vehicle for him to encounter, to come into, so he could do the work. So what does he come in? He comes in and brings a new covenant. He goes, I talk of an all-loving, all-forgiving God, the new covenant, the new image of God, right? So the reason he says that is because he's from the plane of bliss, the same place I went to when I died. The same. I understand exactly what he's saying. He's saying God doesn't have an ego. God can't judge. It's like the sun that shines on everybody equally. There's lesser gods, and there's us carrying our own guilt and unworthiness in our own books, which creates problems, but the source is beyond all that. So he starts teaching about this all-loving, all-forgiving God, and that God is within you, and how you access it is by going within. The temple is within. So that's a whole new covenant. And when we understand this story, a lot of us, because of deep in our soul, we carry these memories of, man, the last time I ran into God, he pretty much fried me and all my people, they have these images, right, of it's old soul memories of getting, even too, if you even mentioned the name Jehovah, you got stoned, you were killed, you couldn't even say his name. And there's a documentary on it called The Life of Brian, if you want to see it. But it's pretty funny. I recommend anybody watch that movie, The Life of Brian. It's pretty hilarious. But they have a crucifixion scene where they're on the cross and they're singing, They're all singing on the cross. I laughed so hard, I think I cured any crucifixion programs that I ever had. But it's pretty funny. But, they're stoning this one guy, and they're going to stone this guy. And he goes, what did I do? And he goes, you said the name. He goes, what name? And he says, you said the name of the Almighty. And he goes, what are you talking about? What name? He finally gets the guy to say the name, and then everybody stones the other guy. But it's pretty funny. The whole scene is just hilarious. But there isn't some truth to that. It shows everybody following him. He's going to stop following me. But it's kind of hilarious. But anyway, going back to this story, what I'm telling you right now is resonating with a lot of you in your soul. Your soul's going, wait a second. The light's clicking. It's going, this is making sense. And so and this is tied right into the ET thing too, because the ETs are our ancestors, and they're returning, and the Earth was terraformed a long time ago by 12 major star nations that came to the Earth. The Lyrians had something to do with it, the ancient Lyrians. There was the Palladians, the Andromedans, the Arcturians, and some of the main groups, but there's 12 major star nations that were involved in terraforming the Earth and bringing a lot of the plants and the animals and everything else, and which goes to, if you go to Hawaii and talk to the Kahunas, where did we come from? They point at the Pleiades. If you talk to the Native American, especially the Cherokee Nation, because I'm part Cherokee, and so I know the lore there. They point at the Pleiades. The Lakota point at the Pleiades. That's where we came from, the Pleiades. And in the Philippines, you go to the shamans over there, they point at the Pleiades. So all around the world, this is common. I don't know, Brendan, you pretty much point at the Pleiades too? Yeah, same thing, the ancestors of Pleiades. So, you know, the ancients, the original people know they still have this knowledge, but the religious right, which is totally wrong, has come in and suppressed all this information. Because they don't want you to know that you have the genes of the gods. They don't want you to know that you're divine and you can all make your own personal connection with Creator and live under universal law and bring universal peace and brother-sisterly love and individual freedom and prosperity back to this planet. They want to keep us divided, you know, so it's a real unfortunate that's just the program. Go ahead, Ellen.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, because of the aliens, they're called Seven Sisters, so
Yeah.
there's more stars
Yeah.
than the aliens. So
Oh, yeah.
I just wonder why there's sister in there, just because that's the first time I've thought of it.
Yeah, mainly because the Pleiades is more of a matriarchal society, and it's aligned more with the divine feminine, and they understand that you have to be subjective to spirit to get the information, and objectively you carry it out. And so really, it's important to find that balance within each and every one of us, but really it's more advanced a lot of times that I think, you know, we should have, I'm all for just find a grandmother and put her in office. You know, forget about the other crap, you know. Forget about, you know, all these other people out there. Just go and find everyday any grandmother that's just raised a family, had kids, that lost kids in war and things like that. Put them in office, and you'll see everything straighten out. You know, you'll be surprised how fast everything will straighten out, because, you know, grandmothers and wives don't send their husbands and kids to war, you know, and they don't engage all this, and they understand, most of them understand their connection to the earth, the mother, and they understand that, you know, they gave birth, you know, like this. And so the ancient times, they talk about the mothers, the birther of all life. We're all family. We're all, even the animals, the plants, everything, we're all family. We all came from the same mother. And it's a lot more accurate, you know, a lot more accurate understanding. But this story that I'm talking about, going back to Jesus, basically, so they created a body for him to come in. Now, the masters, the higher dimensional beings, you know, up in seventh dimensional and stuff like that, beings, what they did is there was 12 masters that had these incredible abilities. And they transferred all of their consciousness and energy to Jesus, and plus 1. So Jesus is 13, so you got 12 plus 1. And Jesus represented Yahweh. He was representing Yahweh. And so when he came in, he picked 12 disciples, and each disciple had some of those attributes of the masters on the other side. And not all of them lived up to their connection, you know, not all of them, you know, they flopped all over the place and everything else. But I'll tell you a little story that Jesus hung out most of the time in the house of Mary, the feminine side. He spent most of the time over there, and the rest of the time he kept trying to educate the disciples, you know, and, you know, going, you don't get it, you know. Say, get back into the heart, you know, it's all about love and joy and bliss and service, you know. That was his whole teachings. But these other guys are trying to intellectualize everything, and he just kept saying, you're missing it, you don't get it. But he hung out more in the house of Mary, which was much bigger. It's a much bigger presence. And I talked in the last workshop about that. The house of Mary is returning, like Mary's energy, the Shekinah energies is really pressing in hard right now to bring this shift about and to bring this change about. So anyway, so he did his thing, he went on. He went to people, the lost years of Jesus. You know, how do you lose somebody for, you know? I think they knew what he did up to age 12, and then all of a sudden they can't figure out. All of a sudden he just, what do you do? Go out and build houses somewhere? You know, built his, you know, out the suburbs or something. I don't know. But they couldn't figure out where he went. Well, everybody else knows where they went. Any theologian that does the research knows where he went. He went to India. He went to Tibet. You know, he did a lot of traveling. And France. You know, so he was hanging out with the Coneheads in France. No, that's just kidding. Coneheads are the original Anunnaki. They're the ones with the Coneheads. But when they did the hybrids, they lost the cone. It's kind of interesting. But going back, I'm kind of jumping around. But this is kind of the history of Earth, but there's more history that I'm just saying this is the history that they've shared with me, because there's all kinds of sub-histories in there, and other nations, like the Cherokee Nation will tell you this. Brendan has the story that could fit in there. And I love what the Native Americans do. They said none of us have the whole story. Until we all come together and share our stories, we're going to know the big picture. And so I'm giving you a partial story of this. This isn't the whole story. And there's a lot of gaps to fit in there. I'd love to see that done someday. Somebody write the real history of Earth. I know Brendan was sharing about the Uluru as came from the Pleiades, And you look at that, you go, that looks like a giant rock that came from space and smacked the Earth, and dust went everywhere. There's red dust everywhere there, and it does kind of look like that, But the geologists will give you this whole other story, which is a whole different story. So, a lot of the stories that geologists give us don't add up. They just, or the scientists will talk about Darwin and random mutation, and none of these things add up. They really don't add up. If you have a lizard, running along the ground, and then random mutation, he grows a finger out that's like, 3 feet long on each side, right? How long do you think that lizard's going to last in the wild? Before something munches him. He's going to get hung up, he's not going to go anywhere, and then he's going to mutate feathers, then he's going to mutate all these things. They have nothing in between. They don't have the lizard and the bird, there's nothing in between. All of a sudden, here's the bird, Same thing with a lot of the plant life. They don't have, there's missing links throughout the whole thing, and the reason why is because things were brought here, where the earth was terraformed. And that's the only one that makes sense. That's the only story that really makes sense. Because when you look at the diversity of life and you get into the genome experiment and all these other things, and they all prove that there was genetic material brought to the earth and incorporated within our system. So basically we're a mix. We're a mix of these genetics from the stars. We're a mix of all these things, but the bottom line is our soul came from the source. And so it doesn't matter what body you're running around in, that you can make your own personal connection with source. The genetics can be changed. Genetics are just a code. Your higher self can rewrite the code. There's everything that can happen, with this higher energy. They find out now that they can take a laser and shoot it through a salamander egg into a frog egg, and the frog becomes a salamander. So here's DNA coming from light, being transferred through light to create change in another system, another system. What do you think the sun is doing? The DNA, the light that's coming from the sun is carrying information. DNA is just information. It's coming in, it's creating massive DNA changes on the earth right now. Things are altering and changing. And so, and that's science now. This stuff that the prophets talked about, or that the enlightened ones a long time ago talked about, is happening now. So when I went to the Star Nation, Star Knowledge Conference, there was all these elders there, and all these chiefs and Native Americans. They're all in the front row. I taught the story, and they're sitting there like this. And I walked up on stage, and I looked at these guys, and I go, oh man, it's like I'm gonna get fried here, energetically. And so I started telling my story, and I talked about the sun and the shifts in the sun, and how the sun's affecting the bioelectric fields and the humans and the plants, and they're creating changes, and the events to come, and how the storms have become superstorms, and the earthquakes are going to increase, and volcanic activity. And I tied all this stuff into the prophecies and everything else. And afterwards, a lot came up to me and they go, how did you get our stories? How did you get our prophecies? And I said, it's not prophecy anymore, it's science. It's like what you've been talking about for thousands of years is now real. It's been scientifically proven. So that's what I go through. And now all the archaeologists like Michael Tellinger, all these other people are bringing out all this information, which is adding to this. What's funny with Michael is Michael's a very good friend of mine, and he wrote the book Slave Species and things like that. Well, what he wrote was true, but it's not the whole story. And so, and when he came to the ranch, I was talking to him about the real story, and I let him actually experience some of these 17-foot tall lion beings that are, and his whole body got hot, and he was sweating and shaking, and he goes, oh crap, you know. And I said, this is for you. They're going to protect you so you can continue your work. And then I explained to him that there's benevolent Anunnaki. They're returning now to take care of business, to right the wrong that happened in the past. And the Pleiadians, the Andromedans, the star nations are all returning now to reset the Earth and get it back on track to the original intent. Because as I said before, the Earth was hijacked when the reptilians and the Greys came in, and Marduk and the fallen Anunnaki did their thing. They hijacked the Earth. And so the Earth fell, and the consciousness fell here, and just made a real mess of things. But now it's getting reset. And so the wraparound here, the main wraparound of the story is guess how the star nations and these other beings refer to humanity. Guess what their name for us is. They call us the forgotten gods. And which is quite an honor, really, because we have the DNA of the gods, and we just forgot. We forgot that our roots. We don't know our real history, and that's what this is all about: is to bring out the real history so we can remember our roots and reconnect, you know, with that divine essence. You know, so.
When did you get this information? What you just shared then?
I just made it up. No. It came from many sources. I can't say one source because it came from conversations with, like, Inha, these ninth dimensional beings. It came from a lot of conversations with the Pleiadians. The Pleiadians were constantly tutoring me as a kid and showing me images and scenes and things like that of ancient history. And so it just came from, I can't really say one source that it came from. A lot of it came from the initiation with the Orion Council of Light. You know, and so I'm saying, like, in Mexico, I was a road bandit, you know, and it was a great lifetime because I had a woman in every canteen and I had a lot of money and I was sharing it. It was like Robin Hood in a way. I was having a great life until I got hung. You know, I got caught and I got hung. And so I still can't wear a tie. I hate anything around the neck. I don't like it. And I was out with these friends when I was a kid. We're out in the desert and they had these pistols and they were shooting bottles and things, you know. I go, God, I'd love to try that, you know. And they handed me a pistol and there's a Michelob bottle sitting there. And they go, see if you can hit it. I go, okay. And I go, bam, and they hit the bottle. The neck fell down. I go, bam, and they hit the neck. And then the cap was in, and then I shot the cap, and they went, phew, and shooting off in the direction. And they go, you liar, you've shot before, you know, you're lying like that. And I go, no, I've never shot a pistol before. And so that's where that came from, that knowledge, you know. I had a psychic that did a reading for me once. It was really good. This guy was, Michael Bevick was his name. He's no longer with us. But he did a reading for me. He goes, you know, you were a road bandit in the past life, and you collect Tibetan art because you were a Tibetan lamas. And he just told my whole life story, and I have all this Tibetan art everywhere and all these other things, and just nailed it, you know. So he helped reaffirm a lot of things that I was aware of already. But it's kind of interesting. So I mean, there's a story of Mexico I could tell you. You know, there's a story of the ancient Vikings I could tell you. You know, it's like in that lifetime, what happened is there was always kind of turmoil between the villages. There was like, it was kind of a really rough time, and there was a lot of kind of in-house fighting. And what they did was my wife and 2 kids went to this other village, and I told her not to go there. Don't go there. Things aren't good. And she goes, well, they have the best, like, pottery or whatever. She's just going there to get dishes or pottery or something like that. I said, don't do it. Do not go there. And she went anyway. You know, one of those age-old stories. You're just trying to control me. You know, I'm going in and I'm trying to save you. But I've had that happen several times in my lifetime. But so she went back and they were killed. You know, they were killed by this other village. You know, and so that, you know, pissed me off. You know, so I grabbed my broad axe and I went to this village by myself. And finally, some other people came in behind me and just laid to waste anybody that was in my way. You know, and then later on, this Viking being appeared to me doing this process-oriented therapy, all of a sudden I see this 7-foot-tall Viking with coal on his face and everything, just you know, I don't know, he was the, you know, it scared the crap out of me almost when I saw it. And I was with this other woman that was taking me through this process. I go, whoa. I said, you just turned into a Viking, you know, you need to heal that. And it was me, you know, I needed to heal. It wasn't her. She was just mirroring it back to me. But I had to heal that part of myself and reclaim that. And so what I had to do is heal the trauma around that and clear that up. And then but maintain the courage, you know, of the Viking, because there was good parts of that too. And so I had to maintain that part. And that's what we're doing. We're healing aspects of our life, but we want to reclaim the good stuff that we had, you know, because I was totally fearless in that lifetime. And so it was kind of interesting. But in this lifetime, what happened, I met the same woman, and she had 2 kids from a previous marriage, you know, and we ended up having a kid together. And then she went over to the other side, the same thing, and we're doing all this spiritual stuff and things, and she went over and started drinking and partying with the loggers, and there's a lot of dissension happening there between us, and the same thing came up, the same issues came up, and it was all because of that past lifetime that I hadn't resolved. I had to recreate that whole thing. I had lifetimes, one lifetime I was a king, and I had a wife, and I knew this wife never loved me. She just loved the power and the wealth and the position. And in that lifetime, when I died, the last thing I was thinking is, like, you know, I'll bet she never did love me. She just loved the power and the wealth. And so I connected with her again in this lifetime. And you know, she was kind of a gold digger. You know, she was going after but this time I didn't have it. I didn't have the money and the wealth and everything else. And so she ran off with a trust funder, you know, with Texaco and things like that. So it was kind of funny, but it was the same. That one thought when you're crossing over creates a whole nother life, a whole nother experience. And so that's why it's so important to release the past, forgive, and let it go so we don't recreate the experience. But I tell a million stories like that where I recreated the same thing, you know, just because I had unfinished business. You know, and that's what this is all about. It's all about, you know, awakening to our true self, or who we truly are, letting go of the unfinished business and the old wounds and traumas and wrong conclusions from past experience. Our whole lives are filled with wrong conclusions and false teachings and misinformation. And once we get the real information, the wisdom settles in the soul, the other stuff goes away, and then we can go on and reconnect. And the main thing I was doing, this goes back to the near-death experience, was when I came back, I said, I want to teach people about the true nature of God, what God really is. It's not a little man with a beard and a lightning bolt and a laptop taking notes, you know, that's not what it is. And it's beyond that. It's not male, it's not female, it's pure bliss, you know. And there's even levels beyond that, you know, that you can go to. But that was my experience, and so that's what I'm doing right now, is I'm teaching people about the true nature of Source, and that Source is within each and every one of us, and we can expand, become one with that. And it's quite a trip when that happens. It's like, you know, you're unique but one. So you're unique, but at the same time you're one, you know, with the Source. And you can do that here. You can walk here in this third dimension and have a 7th dimensional consciousness. And the only problem is you start shifting back and forth now and then. You start going invisible now and then, but it's part of the process. But and it's not that hard to move from this dimension to the next. All you have to do is go a little out of phase. A little bit out of phase. I can show you photographs of us vanishing. You know, we're doing the practices, we're doing this ancient Yigong practices, and all of a sudden you're sitting in your chair and you can see right through the people, and you can see the chair behind you, and people phasing out. And I did a few, who in here I did initiations last night at the thing. I did a couple initiations just to, is there anybody here that was there that got the initiations? You did, or, yeah. You want to say anything about, what did you feel when the energy that came in, what did you experience?
Well, I worked a bit on my Kundalini, and activating my Kundalini, and it's a really interesting body technology when you feel that energy surge up the central nervous system.
Yeah.
And I felt, I guess, a similar experience with that back of the neck and back of the shoulders.
Yeah, the energy
it
movement.
felt like like the energy line was activated, that body technology, and like a reconnection, like a, you know,
The end result, was it kind of bliss? Did you feel like a real bliss?
So I had like a shower of bliss.
And it's just transferring. All I'm doing is
Permanent smile.
We call it the shitty grin. You know, you get this big grin, it doesn't go away, and you're just sitting there going, you know. But anybody else want to share about that, the energy?
I actually had my wings put on a few years ago too. So what actually happened was those wings reconnected with the wings again. And because I was sitting next to this one here, there was a connection with another soul. So that when the connection we were going around, I felt it was two, that's what I felt. There was
kind of oneness.
The oneness was about the two coming together as one.
How about a male perspective back there? What did you feel when the energy came through?
Well, I felt it even before you started.
Yes.
So I knew you were going to ask me. Before you even started, it was like, Kundalini went straight up to another level, and then you started and I could feel it increase even more. But yeah, that energy of bliss, but also expansion, is kind of like coming back to the heart to a great degree, but then opening up. So yeah, the wings, but also just within my sphere and just the energy, very expansive and
So anyway, I just want to get a different perspective of people that experience. That was part of the Yigong initiation that we did. We did the practices like the earth, air, water, and fire, and then we sat and did the position where you sit and just hold your heels up off the ground. You sit like you're holding a ball. And then after that, I went around and I did initiation with magnetic energy. And so I love that because it makes it real. It's like, you know, you can talk about all this stuff forever, but when people really experience the energy, it's like, whoa, this is real. You know, this is real stuff. And it actually kind of cracks the door for it to go on, you know, further into it. I wanted to show a little bit. This is what when the scientists came out and when we were doing the sessions, this is the energy. You can actually film the energy. You can see the energy coming into the room, and you can see people's bodies pixelate into light when the energy comes in. And this is the same. This is another process, but it's the same energy. It's bringing this energy in. It comes in. The the bodies pixelate into light, and then you connect in. And that was Ezekiel's energy from the plane of bliss that I was talking about earlier. And I'll do one more. This is Mary's energy coming in, which is pink. When her energy comes in, it's pink, and then you see the bodies turn into pink. It's a little washed out on the screen here, but you can see how that process works. So what's nice about that is this is experiential. I told the masters when I was doing this work, I don't want to just come up here and talk about a bunch of words and things. I want it experiential. If you could make it experiential, I'll do the clearing work and the counseling work. But I just don't want to just be another person out there telling stories. You know, I want the person to experience the energy. And that was the deal I made, you know, to do the work. And so, you know, the right teachers came and things like that to show me how to do these processes. What's nice about this is that because of the near-death experience, the door is open and I can transfer that. I can transfer that energy out, and that's what throws you into bliss or opens up your channels, or that's the energy that creates these events. So what's nice about that? A, it's transferable. B, anybody can do it, and C, you know, why not? You know, why not plug in? You know, the only thing you have to lose is your fear, your guilt, your unworthiness, and all the nonsense. And what you have to gain is just pure bliss, you know, with this energy. And it doesn't mean you're going to stay there, because we have to do our work. You know, we have to keep clearing the energy. I love what Pete was talking about in Salrita. You know, they were talking about in India. They said the closer you get to nirvana, the more the demons rear their ugly heads. And And so the greater your light, the more moths come to the light. They come, and a lot of moths come for two. A lot of them come for healing. You know, there are a lot of discarnate spirits, even some ETs that are self-serving, that will come to you for clearing, for healing, and some will come to disrupt. They just come to disrupt. You're interfering with their world, their realm. The more light you bring in the planet, the more you're interfering with the Archon network and the draconian rule that's here right now. So it's just part of the process, but you can't stop. You have to keep going forward. You know, if you stop and shrink into fear and your aura goes down, then they're going to get you. You know, so when you go on this process, no matter how hard it is, you have to keep going. I had a really powerful lesson once, and it was when I was breaking up with the woman that I was talking about, doing the gold digger thing. It was really rough for me because I was really connected to her, and so I'm doing this counseling on this 14-year-old and her mother in there, you know, and all of a sudden this 14-year-old goes into full channel mode, and Isis came through her, you know, this feminine aspect, and through this 14-year-old, she goes, no matter how hard it hurts, you have to keep loving. And she said, loving is the only way out, the only way through is to keep loving. And I shut down. I went into defensive mode, and I went into, I want to know what's going on, and all that stuff was coming up, and all the pain was coming from that. It was bringing up past life trauma from being betrayed, and all that stuff was coming up for me, and I'm just clearing it, and finally this 14-year-old just nails me, you know, and says, you have to keep loving. And I go, you know, I just have to open full blast, open my heart, let the source come through me, and just stay open, clear this, no matter what. No matter how much it hurts, I have to go through this. And I did, and on the other side, I was totally released from all of it. And so it's a very, very powerful lesson in loving without attachment, like loving detachment, and also unconditional love, that no matter what somebody's going through, I can keep my own center. You know, I can hold that space. And so it was a powerful lesson. That's what all these lessons are we're getting right now, is to learn to get back to your center. And so if you can get back to your center, make your own personal God connection, all this stuff is happening around you, and it's going to be like a dream. Like we've been talking a lot about it right now with Pete, so Ray and I go, does this all seem like a dream to you right now? And right now it's because part of me is in a whole other place right now. And then part of me is sitting here talking to you. There's two things going on. There's an observer watching all this, and there's another part of me sitting here interacting with you. And it's kind of interesting because sometimes I have trouble just grounding, just making this a little more real, you know. But after the near-death experience, I really had a hard time grounding, getting back on the planet again. But it's kind of interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
You know, I really appreciate all you've shared, Joe. I was just wondering whether you'd be prepared to talk, because we all live in this world, we all have to earn a certain amount of money, put bread and butter on the table and pay the bills. Whether you'd be interested to expand a little bit in regard to the money system and the economy, as far as, you know, you mentioned about that 300-year-old Chinese man. You know, I know other people have questions, but you know, whatever.
Okay.
If you'd like to share a little bit about the money and the new money system, or the new,
I'll tell you a little story. Before I came here, I was in Japan, and I was working with, you know, a lot of people in Japan and doing all these workshops and things. My next stop was China, and I had to cancel that trip, mainly because I was meeting with the elders and with the Golden Dragon, you know, the head of the Golden Dragon and all that stuff. And I had to cancel that trip because of my own government. I started getting all these phone calls and people saying, you know, you have to go and represent us, and you have to make sure the gold comes to us and all this other stuff. And to be honest with you, I could give a rat's ass about the gold. I really don't care about it. And other than how it can help people. If it can help others, great. But to me, it's like, it's not important, you know. And so I was more going there to meet with this grandfather. There's some initiations that were going to happen, some connections, and that's why I was going. And so anyway, a lot of people know the story about there is so much gold out there, it's unimaginable how much gold has been held back. And they all know that at this time, a little affirmation, at this time, all of this gold, and it's in the quadrillions of dollars, is supposed to be released for humanitarian purposes. And now the problem with that is that the gold is there, even just the interest on the gold and the other stuff is enough to solve all of our problems on the planet. And the money's there. The problem is that the distribution and setting up a way, they don't want it to go to the wrong places and do this trickle-down effect. They want it to go from the bottom up. And so the distribution part of it is being worked out. It's pretty much being worked out right now. And there's going to be some big changes in the next 2 months, big announcements being made and things like that. The Federal Reserve is toast. I mean, it's gone, basically. And everything's going to, from my understanding, they're already there. They're going to have a treasury note. A lot of people, when they go to the ATM and hit it, they're going to start getting treasury notes, and that's all you're going to see is treasury notes coming out versus, and that's going to be backed by gold. And there's a whole new system. I don't know the dynamics of whether the Federal Reserve note is probably going to be devalued. Most likely, it probably will have some devaluation. I don't know about those dynamics yet, because a lot of it depends on, you know, the banksters, basically, and they don't have an option. They have to go with this, but a lot of them are creating resistance and false flags and all these other problems right now to create disruption of this happening. And so but basically the higher dimensional beings and everybody is behind this shift, and it's the old Archon network, the old draconian law that we're under right now is being torn apart. There's a whole new system called universal law that's coming in, and the gold and the restoration of the earth and everything else is all part of that. So I don't know the dynamics on how that's all going to unfold yet, but I know it is unfolding, it is real. And I've talked to people on the highest level. I want to warn people a little bit. There are people out there saying they represent these grandfathers and things like that. They're asking for money and support and things like that. Be really careful about that, because they're the grandfather and the people that really control the gold are upset about that, because there's people making promises that they can't keep, and it's going to reflect back on them. And they're saying, look, we're not going to finance these guys because they're looking at their new beach house and their new Mercedes and everything else, and then whatever is left, they're going to trickle down. And he said, that's not what it's all about. So a lot of people are being manipulated through greed to join these things, and they're saying, oh, they're spiritual, and we're going to do this and that. The money's going to go to the people that already have a history of helping and serving humanity, and it's going to go from the bottom up, and it's going to help, you know, a lot of the indigenous people, the original people. It's going to come, and I'm talking to elders right now of all these different nations that are aware of this, and the money is coming in, and I don't want to talk too much about it right now, because it's kind of in a process right now that I don't want to interrupt, you know.
So do you sort of see that there could be, you know, like governments withholding money, like, for example, people get pensions and things like that, that say the US government or the Australian government, these sort of low culture people are going to try and hold back government, like maybe what happened in Greece. I don't know the full implications of Greece,
Yeah.
but you know. Yeah.
Well, what's going to happen is basically what happened in Iceland eventually. And I don't know if you're aware of what happened in Iceland. They came and they just came in and arrested all the banksters, and they took over their buildings, and they're selling them, and the money's going back to the people. And they said, we're not paying your debt, it's a false debt, and everything else. And eventually that's what's going to end up happening. And one of the biggest problems is the United States Corporation of America and the Federal Reserve and these guys. and the war industry, which has been the brute squad for the corporations, all that's coming to an end. And when that goes, the rest will go, very quickly. And there's a lot of people that are involved in that they've actually taken the teeth out of these guys, and they are floundering right now. They don't know where to go with it. So it's in process right now. What they told me is that a lot of the banksters were just going to default. They printed all this money and made all these massive loans, and they feathered their nest, with all this, billions of dollars in gold and everything else. Well, they're going to default on all that. And so they're going to just default on all of it and then put the debt back on the American people. And what happened is they went to the World Court thinking that the World Court would go, oh yeah, okay, you're free, don't worry about it, we'll just pass the debt on to the people. Well, they didn't realize that the Chinese actually came in and pretty much took over the World Court, and they said no. They said no, you'll be responsible for your debt, and if you can't pay your debt, you'll be held liable for it, whatever that means, jail or wherever it's going to come from that. So they also came in and they bought the note. There's a note, it's like a contract that whenever you print money, you're supposed to back it by gold, a certain amount of gold, it's an insurance. Well, they never paid any of that. And so the same group came in and bought that contract, and then they foreclosed on the Federal Reserve. So that's why the Federal Reserve is out of business right now. It's pretty much out of business. And a lot of people are trying to get things done with the Federal Reserve and nothing's happening. And they're saying call us back after the first of the year. We don't know what's going to happen. And that's all part of that process. So there's all these underlying things going on and efforts, and I don't know how it's going to work out. And a lot of it looks like the military is going to shift and start getting on the right side of the fence. And when that happens, everything else. There's all these arrest warrants and everything that the provost marshal has, and he has to go forward with these. And, like 70 counts of treason against, leaders, top leaders, And so, that's in the works, but you'll probably see this unfolding really quick. I think the next 2 months, a lot of this is going to